Infrastructure and Automation. With a strong academic background, Professor Sanadhya has led research and consultancy projects worth over 9 crores, collaborated with government agencies and corporations, and published extensively in top-tier journals like IEEE and ACM. A dedicated mentor, he has guided numerous PhD and master's students and has been recognized with multiple Best Instructor Awards, including the Distinguished Teachers Award at IIT Jodhpur in 2024. Please join me in welcoming Professor Soumitra Kumar Sandhar sir.
Teach, okay, because I had industry experience and that was so CDOT has this in their product suite today. Cross कर दीजिए दोनों साइड से मार्क और ये भी दर्शक दीजिए व्यू बटन है वो यहाँ आजकल इन्होंने उधर कर दिया है नहीं वो नीचे ये वाला नहीं ये यहाँ से हो जाएगा ठीक है अच्छा नहीं फुल स्क्रीन फुल कंट्रोल एल हाँ ये वाला ओके ओके थैंक यू वेरी मच ये काम करेगा यस ठीक है ओके फैंटास्टिक ओके so it's as I said my pleasure to be in JNU after maybe about 15 years I came here okay it's been long time I have not been in JNU so of course so whatever success I had JNU has contribution okay so I am very happy to again come to this place okay. So I'll talk about the background and the need for PQC and the talk was extremely mathematical till last night. Today morning I reduced some of the mathematics but still it is very mathematical okay. So because cryptography is math okay, so I cannot avoid that. If required, I can also explain few things on board, and I'll try to keep the intuition level high. I'll skip some proofs, etc. kind of things. Okay. So the proofs you can always learn from the book, but getting the idea, the intuition is much more important in my opinion. So far if you look at today most of the internet is secure because of these two problems, the RSA problem and the discrete log problem. So the RSA problem essentially says that you have to, I mean the hard problem there is related to factoring large composite numbers. Okay. So composite numbers of special form. So if I give you a composite number, you can possibly factor it with a very high probability. Because every alternate number, if I randomly pick a number, is going to be even. So 50% chance that the number I give you is even. So you will factor it very easily. Even if not, so there is another 1/3 probability in addition to that, which is the number might be divisible by 3 and so on. So it may have very small factor. But now I can create bad numbers for which factoring is very hard. And those kind of numbers can be which have very few factors. So I will take a prime number P, another prime number Q, and I will give it to you. Now this new number PQ, it is composite, but it has only 4 factors. 2 are trivial, 1 and the number itself, that is true for all the numbers, and the only 2 non-trivial factors are P and Q. So now unless you succeed in finding one of them, you cannot factorize it, and this problem is very hard. Okay. So I give you P times Q and ask you to find out those P or Q, it is very hard problem. Now again, to make the problem as hard as possible, you would not like one of the numbers to be very small. If P is very small and Q is very large, you can just search for the smaller one. So the best case for problem setting is that you make P and Q to be roughly of equal size. So if the number n is P times Q, both P and Q are roughly square root of n. Okay. So that is what we use in RSA. And the second problem is discrete log problem. which is the basis of elliptic curve cryptography, Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and other stuff which all of us use. So when you go to internet banking today, this is something which is being done without you noticing it. There is a key exchange happening, and that key exchange is usually happening through Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Okay. So that is hardness of that problem is coming from discrete block problem. So with both these problems, the main point is that there is some mathematical problem which is hard to solve, and that is what is giving you security. Like in the case of RSA, as I mentioned already, factoring this number of form P times Q is very, very hard. So RSA actually, if you look at more technically, the RSA problem is not about factoring. The RSA problem is actually on a modulo set. So a ring of integers modulo a number n, which is P times Q. You have to find ith root of an integer, which means I give you some number, you have to find which number raised to the power e mod n will give me this answer. So that is the decryption problem in RSA. So finding eth root modulo n. However, it is shown under certain assumptions, okay, which is called standard group assumption. In that standard group assumption, it is known that the RSA problem is equivalent to factoring problem. So, however, we know one generic reduction, that is, if you can factorize, you can break the RSA. But if you can break RSA, it is no guarantee that you can factorize. So that RSA problem is known to be weaker than the factoring problem. Okay, so if technically you look at it. But for all practical purposes, we have no way to find eth roots. Hence, it is the factoring which is considered to be the RSA problem. Okay. So most people, when you talk to, they will say, well, if you ask them what is RSA problem, they will say, oh, factorization. But that is not true. RSA problem is finding eth roots modulo an integer n, which happens to be weaker than factoring. But we do not know of any method to practically solve that problem, and hence we actually solve only factoring problem. And in discrete log problem, you are given a group generator G and a random element X you pick and compute G to the power X. So the group G and G to the power X, and now I give both of you to you and ask you what is X. What is that exponent which produces this G to the power X number? And you will not be able to find, that is called discrete log problem. So the group usually is numbers modulo a prime number P, and that's why I have written here G and G to the power X. Given G and G to the power X, you have to recover X. And this problem is what leads to the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Okay. Now, we look at quantum computers. This is a new paradigm, and it started the idea by Richard Feynman. Feynman came up with this thing, and he said, why not use quantum systems for compute also? So that is something he did, and if we have large-scale quantum computers, we'll be able to achieve a lot of things. So the problems, if you look at the complexity theory paradigm, all problems in BQP, the class bounded error quantum polynomial time problems, will be solvable on a quantum computer. And BQP is known to contain many of the problems like RSA and the Diffie-Hellman, etc. So we will be actually able to break all of them if quantum computers come. BQP class is contains all of them. Okay. So these problems are not known to be in P, so classical computers cannot solve them, but they are known to be in BQP, so quantum computers will solve them. So that is what we know, and it is believed that actually certain problems, it is proven that quantum computers are actually exponentially faster than classical computers. Okay. There is a gap, very clear gap, where we have proven results that certain problems can be solved exponentially faster on quantum computers, but not in classical, in comparison to classical. Okay. So this game-changing algorithm came in 1994 by Peter Shor, and what he did is that he gave a concrete algorithm which is actually a randomized algorithm. So you run it, it sometimes gives you correct answer, sometimes it doesn't give you answer or gives you a wrong answer, but you can repeat it. So and it's a standard practice in computer science, theoretical computer science, that if you have a polynomial time algorithm, then you can with some probability epsilon, you can just repeat it enough number of times to make the epsilon as good as possible. I mean, you can make it 99%. For example, I give you an algorithm which is correct only 60% of the times, or 51% of the time, not even say 51%. 50% I don't want, because there's only two values, yes and no. Then I toss a coin, it will anyway give me 50% chance. So that is not really an algorithm. I must have some extra power to distinguish the correct answer from a random answer. So if I have 51% chance of finding a correct answer by running an algorithm one time, I can repeat it t number of times to make this 51% to 99%. Okay, where t can be computed by very simple calculations. Okay, so just by extended, and this is something that you might already remember from school days, that if I shoot a bird, the probability of killing the bird is 0.6. And I shoot it 3 times and assume that the bird is not a real bird, so it doesn't fly when I shoot again and again, what is the probability that it will be killed? So the answer is, the only case it will not be killed is when I fail in all 3 attempts. So it is 0.4 into 0.4 into 0.4. Okay, so that is 0.064. Okay, so that is essentially what you are telling is 99.9% chances that in 3 shots the bird will be killed. Whereas initial probability was only 60%. I could make it 99.9% in 3 shots. So that is the same idea. If you have 50% probability, 1% probability of solving a problem, you repeat it a number of times, you can make it 99%. So Shor's algorithm is practically telling you that even though it is randomized algorithm, it is good enough to break certain things. Now, when I give you a number n, and you want to write in binary strings, it will take a space of log n. Okay. So your input length is log n. Okay. And in computer science, again you remember that the cost of an algorithm is measured with respect to the input length. So when I say polynomial time algorithm, it is with respect to the input length. So if my input length is t, my algorithm should run in time t to the power 4, 5 times t to the power 7, stuff like that. These are called polynomial time algorithms. So here your number input length is input is n, input length is log n, and this algorithm takes log n cube, which is polynomial in the length of the input. So this is actually a polynomial time algorithm, very efficient algorithm. We call polynomial algorithms as efficient algorithms, and it's probabilistic, but I can repeat it and I can make it as close to 1 probability as required. So this actually says that we'll be able to break RSA and all discrete law based problems if we have a quantum computer on which I can run Shor's algorithm. So practically all the crypto that we are using today will be broken if we have a quantum computer available. So this is a picture of what I discussed so far, that these are the 2 classical problems on the basis of which we use crypto. Then if a quantum computer exists, I will be able to run Shor's algorithm on this and will break the crypto systems. Okay. So this is the essence of whatever I have discussed so far. Okay. Now come back to this. What is the quantum computing's current state? So as of today, we have very small qubit quantum computers. So quantum computers of the kind that they can factorize a number 21 as 7 times 3. So that sort of quantum computers. Google is claiming that they have created a quantum computer with 100 qubits, etc. But they are not really telling the truth. It is not really a full-scale quantum computer. It is some adiabatic quantum computer which can do certain things, but it is not really having the capability of all the things that quantum computer can do. Okay. And in future we are expecting in next 10-20 years, maybe such large-scale quantum computers will come into picture. So today we are in this middle state, okay, which is called a NISQ era. Intermediate size quantum computers, which are supported by classical computers. So maybe I have only a few qubit quantum computer, but I can have a GPU system which is actually a big supercomputer. Okay. That already exists today. So we are in that intermediate era right now. Hopefully in the long term we will have large-scale quantum computers. And unless we have this large-scale quantum computers, there is no question to even talk about post-quantum crypto. It is not needed. RSA will not be broken, Diffie-Hellman key exchange will not be broken, elliptic cryptography will not be broken. Because to break them, we require large-scale quantum computers, which are not present today. However, the problem is, if you look at crypto, crypto is extremely hard to implement. First of all, very hard to standardize. Once the standard is made, it is implemented across, then it is very hard to change. And that is why the time to make that decision is now. Because tomorrow, after 10 years, if something happens, we will not have time to change the standards and implement the crypto required at that point of time. Okay. So that is the reason that we are looking at it. By the way, people also say that such quantum computers may never exist. So there is a big debate in physics community. There are people who say there are physical limitations and such large-scale quantum computers will never come into picture. And this is a joke. People say that for last 20 years we have been hearing that quantum computers are coming in next 10-15 years. Okay. So these are common standard people who say. So I do not know, I am not from physics side, so I have no idea, but I just simply believe that they exist because math is beautiful. The kind of things we can do with quantum computers is absolutely beautiful, and how to prevent those attacks is also absolutely beautiful. So that is why at least studying this as a subject is a wonderful thing for us. Okay. So what are the basic stuff? I again have very little, this is the only slide on quantum, so don't worry. I will not explain much about this. There are a few things, but I will skip them later. So rather than having a classical bit 0 or 1, we have a qubit, which is actually a superposition of 0 and 1. So with certain probability it could be 0, with certain probability it could be 1, something like that. So it can encode information about both 0 and 1. And when I measure a qubit, then it will tell me either 0 or 1. Because measurement only gives me one value. Measurement cannot be in multiple places. Okay. But it can encode information about multiple things. So what we try to do in quantum computers is that we try to create a state. That state contains exponential amount of information. Like if I have a n-bit quantum computer, I can actually superimpose and create 2 to the power n possible sets encoded in this n qubit system. And I can somehow do synthesis on that state and try to ensure that certain amplitudes become larger and certain amplitudes become small, because it's an n qubit system. So I just try to make sure by this algorithm, whatever algorithm we are studying, that these probabilities of these states change. And when I am sure that there is a big probability that my answer is now having a very high amplitude, I will measure at that point of time and I will get the correct answer. Okay. So there is probability involved in every case. But the point is, I don't care about the probability because I can repeat the experiment again. Okay. So that is the top level idea. I will have an n qubit system. So I will be able to encode 2 to the power n things in that system, and then I will do some operations to manipulate the amplitudes of those 2 to the power n states. Once I am sufficiently guaranteed that that state which I am looking for as an answer has the highest amplitude now and everything else has become close to 0, I will measure it. So I will get the correct answer. So then there are these various properties, entanglement and interference, etc., which are also there. Superposition, what you said is that this is a combination of both the states. Okay. Now what Shor's algorithm does, Shor's algorithm is actually for a mathematical problem known as period finding. And what happens is, if you can find the period of a function f, a periodic function f, you can actually solve these problems. So I'll explain how to solve integer factorization using a period finding problem on something. Okay. So this is the kind of a problem I want to talk about. There is a function f such that f of x and f of x plus r are always equal, okay, for all values of x. That immediately tells you that r is the period. After r period it is repeating. Okay. So it is like a sine wave or any periodic function. Okay. So f of x and f of x plus r are same for all values of x. R is a constant and my goal is to find out that r. What is the period of this function? Okay. So in Shor's algorithm, we take this function f as a to the power x mod n, and then we try to find the period of this function fx. Okay. And it so happens that that period tells me what is the factorization of the number n. So remember, our problem is to factorize a number n, which is known to be p times q. Both p and q are prime. How do I find those p and q? By just solving a period finding problem. So I'll explain that here. How does it solve? So I have a function fx which is a to the power x mod n. The number n is p times q. And what I will do is I will pick a random a. I will randomly pick anything. Okay. This is why probability is involved now. Okay. Because for some choices of a, I may not get answer. So now, if this function has a period r, it implies that a to the power x and a to the power x plus r must be equal modulo n. That is the definition of period. Okay. Now, if a to the power x and a to the power x plus r are equal, that means a to the power r is congruent to 1 mod n. Okay. So because you can cancel out a to the power x on both sides, take and cancel out. Okay. So under certain conditions you can cancel out. As long as a to the power x and n are co-prime, you can actually cancel out. So you will pick that a here, that not completely random, it should be chosen such that GCD of a and n is 1. But even if you randomly pick a, you will always get GCD of a and n to be 1. Why should it be the case? Because when can the GCD of a and capital N not be equal to 1? When will that happen? Remember, n is p times q. So the only time you can find such an A is when you have either a multiple of p or a multiple of q as A. But those numbers are extremely small. So the probability of finding such an A is extremely small, and if you somehow succeed in finding, you have already factorized n. There is nothing left to do, because Euclidean algorithm can find GCD between any two integers. So I will take such an A and n, compute GCD. If it doesn't come out to be equal to 1, I have already solved. I don't need to do anything. Stop. Classically, I have solved the problem of factorization. So that is not likely. It is going to happen with an extremely small probability. So we assume it to be okay, not happening. So I have chosen an A which is not co-prime, which is co-prime to n, and hence I have this condition, and this condition allows a to the power r is congruent to 1 mod n, which means I have the number A which I picked. Number n is known to me. I don't know what x is. I don't know what r is, but a to the power r is going to give me 1 modulo n, which means if I compute a to the power r, it is going to be a number of the form of some multiple of n plus 1, k n plus 1. Okay. Because if I divide by n, I will get a remainder of 1. So I just rewrite it. A to the power r congruent 1 mod n can be written as a to the power r minus 1 congruent to 0 mod n. So a to the power r minus 1 is a number which is going to give me a remainder of 0 if I divide that number by n. So when do I get a number 0? When I divide something by n. That number must be a multiple of n. Okay. Because then only remainder is 0. So a to the power r minus 1 is a multiple of n. Okay. But a to the power r minus 1 was less than n. We are actually doing mod n. All operations are mod n. The only possibility for a to the power r minus 1 to have a multiple of n is when the two factors of a to the power r minus 1, which is a to the power r minus 2 minus 1 and a to the power r by 2 plus 1, they are giving me p and q. Otherwise I could not have had 0 mod n. Because this, you think of a to the power as a to the power r by 2 square. So it is x square minus 1. So I can factorize as x minus 1, x plus 1, which is precisely what we have written here. Now, if product of two numbers is a multiple of n, one of the factors must be giving me p, the other factor must be giving me q. Because those are the only factors of n. Okay. There is nothing else possible. And hence, what I do now, I need to find p and q. So, but I know a and I know r. Suppose I can find somehow. Then I know a to the power r by 2 minus 1. I also know a to the power r by 2 plus 1. So I just take GCD of these numbers with p with this capital N. I will find p and q. Okay. With one of them I will get p, the other one I will get q. But I don't need to find both. I just find one and I can do n by p and I will find q. So the product of p and q is n. So I don't even need to do both the calculations. Any one of them is fine. So at least this tells you how to factorize using Shor's algorithm. So the only thing left now is that if Shor can find the period r, I am done. I will break RSA. Okay, everybody is okay with this? Okay. So the one small detail here is that I did this step to this step. So I am assuming that r is even. If r was not even, I couldn't write this a to the power r minus 1 as x square minus 1 and then factorize this. So what if I get r to be, say, odd? I will discard and I choose another a and again restart. Okay. So that is again the probability involved there. So the probability in this operations is coming from the choice of A and the answer R that I get. Okay. So that is entirely dependent on the choice of A. Okay. So basically only the choice of A will decide whether this answer is going to be correct or I will not be able to solve. So in some cases I may not be able to solve this. If R comes out to be odd, I will stop here. I will not be able to factorize and hence I will not be able to find P and Q. So that is the failure case, but hopefully with a good probability I will be able to succeed. I can repeat a couple of times and I will succeed. So, now what Shor's algorithm does is there is a quantum Fourier transform. So just like Fourier transform, the discrete Fourier transform, what it does, it actually starts to work in the frequency domain. Okay. Some input domain you give and it transforms into frequency domain. So here also you have an input state x, you convert into some output state, this is cat k. Okay. So some quantum state k which is created after quantum Fourier transform. So you have a quantum circuit which is applied on this state X to create this state K. And that state K, what we will try to do is we will first choose a random integer A such that GCD of A and N is 1. Then I will create a quantum state that is going to encode this function in superposition. By superposition I mean all possible values will be there in one bit, one state. And then I will try to synthesize something, and the specific value will be obtained from there. So essentially what we do, I create two registers, one to store the value of X and the other to store the value of A to the power X mod n. And then I will apply Hadamard transform on first register. So this requires quantum computing, so I will not bother too much about it. All it says is that somehow I do a superposition of all values of X, the number of states to be larger than n square. And then I apply f of X on this state in the second part. So there are two parts to the state that I created. First part contains X, the other part contains f of X. So first part I superimpose and I take all possible combinations of X in quantum state. And in the second part I will compute this, apply f of X on this. So I will have this kind of a state. Okay. And on that state I will, so this is first and the second part. Now on the first part I will apply quantum Fourier transform. So when I apply quantum Fourier transform, it will convert the answers into frequency domain, and that frequency will be highest which has the period. So for that periodic value the frequency will be highest, and so when I measure I will get that number R. So this is all top level idea, so don't bother. You need to study at quantum computing if you want to study this detail. For our purpose it is enough to know that there is a method which gives me period, and the period gives me factorization. Okay. So that is the kind of a thing. Okay. And as I already mentioned, this is, yes?
जो भी क्वांटम में जितने भी अभी क्वांटम कंप्यूटिंग में जो भी आपने सोर्स एल्गोरिथम बताए ये सब अप्रोक्सीमेशन पे काम करेंगे.
Every algorithm in quantum is all probabilistic.
क्योंकि
Not approximation. Approximation is something else. There is a difference between approximation algorithm and randomized algorithm. Approximation algorithms don't give you the correct answer.
yes,
They give you an approximate answer like with some guarantees.
yes,
Like if it's typically talked in terms of optimization problems. So I want to minimize the function fx. What an approximate algorithm will do is they say, well, I may not be able to find the minimum if that minimum is m, but I will give you an answer which is less than or equal to 2m. Okay, so it is called a two approximate algorithm. Okay, so approximate algorithms are in that sense not even giving you the correct answer. They are giving you an upper bounded correct answer or lower bounded correct answer. Okay. Whereas randomized algorithms, they are going to give you correct answer, but they can also give you wrong answer. Okay. So these algorithms are going to give you correct answer with some probability. So sometimes they may give you wrong answer. Okay.
बट सर क्वांटम तो एकदम करेक्ट चीजों पे बोल ही नहीं सकता है.
No, so quantum will give you a probabilistic answer, which means sometimes correct, sometimes not. So you need to repeat it enough number of times, and that's why if you look at all quantum algorithms, you will never see number of steps required is this. All the cost analysis is in big O. For that reason, because the algorithms are probabilistic. So all algorithms are probabilistic. Okay. So this is essentially the picture of Shor's algorithm now. You can forget the details, but idea is choose an n. The n is your input. You have to factorize this n. Choose a random a. Initialize these registers. Create superposition. Then evaluate this function a to the power x mod n, and then apply quantum Fourier transform to find the period r for this function fx. And then you do post-processing, which is on classical. Only this part requires quantum computers. 1, 2, 3. These 3 steps in between, they require quantum computers. The first one is of course just picking an A, which can be done on classical computer, and the last 2 steps can be done on classical computer. Because now you simply do GCD computations and factorization and so on. Okay. So this is an example that n is 15 and a is 7. And suppose I find the period of this function a to the power x mod n to be 4, then 7 to the power 4 by 2 is, that is r to the power x by 2, sorry, x to the power r by 2, so that a to the power x by 2, so that number will come out to be 7 square, which is 49, which is 4 mod 15. So now my factors are going to be GCD of 4 minus 1 and GCD of 4 plus 1 with 15. So here is an example, GCD 4 minus 1 and 15 is 3, and GCD of 4 plus 1 and 15 is 5. So I could factorize 15. So this is just a numerical idea to tell you how we can factorize. Okay. Of course, what will happen is n will be given to you. You will pick a random A. Shor's algorithm will give you R. So in this case, Shor's algorithm is given R to be equal to 4. And if you know R, then now you can factorize this way. Okay. So the rest of the things are very pretty standard. Okay. Now there is a similar technique which we can do to show that even this discrete log problem can be broken. So there also we will take some g to the power x mod n kind of a stuff, g to the power x mod p kind of a thing, and then we will find factor and we will try to solve this discrete log problem there. Okay. So so classical algorithms that we know today, they are not exponential, but they are slightly less than exponential. They are not polynomial. So there is something between polynomial and exponential. So this is sub-exponential algorithms. So what we know for factorization is a sub-exponential algorithm. So it is beyond the reach of classical computers, and this algorithm is known as GNFS, Generalized Number Field Sieve. Using Generalized Number Field Sieve, as of today, in academic community, we have been able to factorize numbers of the form of about 850 bits. Okay, about that much. So it is still less than 1000 bits that we can factorize. 1000 bits means approximately 300 digit number. But in RSA that we use today, we are using numbers of the size of maybe say 700 bits, 700 digits, 2000 bit RSA, RSA 2048 for example, or RSA 4096. So those are requiring in decimal a prime number of size 700 digits. Okay. Whereas what we can do is this P and Q should be about 150 digits only. So P times Q is about 300 digits. So there is a big gap between what we can do versus what is practically, what is the real problem. So classically we cannot still solve this 2000 bit RSA and 4000 bit RSAs, and that is why they are secure. Okay. So you go to your bank and you can check the size of the certificate, and you will see that the certificate size is actually about 2048 and so on. See, I can just check here. There is internet. Yeah, I can just open anything. Okay, I can just open. Yeah, this is Google. This is enough. I just click here. I say connection is secure, and I want to see connection is secure. What is certificate is valid? For details, it says I should look at details, and I'll come here. Certificate signature algorithm. This is PKCS RSA encryption. I want to see public key, elliptic curve public key. So it is talking about public key's value. So you see this is public key. Okay. So this is our elliptic curve public key. So this is how much is it? I don't know. Everything is 1 byte. So it's hexadecimal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16, 64, 66. So 66 times 8. कितना हुआ? About what 500 bits. So 512 bits का होगा ये. ठीक है? This is elliptic curve of 512 bits. Okay. So this is elliptic curve of 512 bits, which is roughly corresponding to 1024 bit RSA. Okay. So this is the kind of a problem that we are using right now. So you go to any site, you will be able to see that kind of a thing. Again, come back here, Control L, and we are back. So this is practically not solvable, but if quantum computers come, then they will be solvable. And similarly, for discrete log problem also, we have similar kind of algorithms, sub-exponential algorithms. So beyond beyond polynomial, but not exponential. So somewhere in between, which are beyond the reach of classic. But Shor's algorithm is actually now polynomial in the length of the input, just log n cube. And polynomial algorithms we say are very efficient algorithms. So if we have such an algorithm, we will be able to break everything. And hence there is the need. Of course, what is the practical problem? We do not yet have these large scale quantum computers. Error correction is a big challenge, because in a quantum computer, these quantum states don't retain their value for a long period of time. These quantum states actually degenerate into something because of noise. So today we are not able to control that noise. So low noise, large scale quantum computers, they do not exist. And this is what we are hoping, that in maybe 10-20 years we will have such low noise, the quantum state can actually retain its value for a long period of time, so that I can do some computations without being bothered that the value has changed. Okay. The number of qubits which are required is very, very large. For example, with my one PhD student, I wrote a paper about how many qubits will be required if you want to break a particular symmetric cryptography algorithm. And we showed that the number of qubits required is of the order of 20,000. We are talking about few qubits right now. Okay. And we require 20,000 qubits. Not only 20,000 qubits, we also require quantum RAM. So quantum RAM also very, very high quantum RAM. So today we don't have that. So practically we are safe, but we don't know who has done what. Maybe some secret services have already created quantum computers. Okay, we do not know. So that is why there is a time to worry. Okay. So again, this is the summary of whatever I discussed so far. That they don't exist. Quantum computers don't exist. But if they exist, then they will break everything. And hence we need methods which will remain secure even against quantum computers. And there's some references for this part. Now I can come to the second part, the QC standardization system. So US government has a body which is like our these BIS standards or ISI standard, okay, Indian Standards Institute. Okay, we have this helmets with ISI mark. So those kind of things. So they had an organization called NBS, National Bureau of Standards, which was renamed in 80s or maybe early 90s to NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology. And very interestingly, it is a body in the Department of Commerce, because their goal is to sell things and standardize things. So it is not a technical body. Its body is actually in the Department of Commerce. Okay. And it leads to standards being created for everything, including algorithms standard. So they are the ones who created what is known as Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, which all of us use now. They are the ones who standardized elliptical cryptography. They are the ones who standardized hash functions, everything, digital signatures, everything they have standardized. And because they are the leaders in the world in business and etc. So if they demand something, industry creates those algorithms or supports those algorithms, and they become de facto standard for everybody. For example, if today you want to do any business with US government, you must have AES 256 built on your system. And if the company is building a product which is having AES encryption, they will sell the same algorithm to other countries also. So practically, whatever algorithms are defined by NIST become de facto standard across the world. Not de jure standard, but de facto standard. Okay. So what they are doing now, they created a program to create standards for post-quantum cryptography, which means cryptographic algorithms which will remain secure even when quantum computers come. So Shor's algorithm will not be able to do anything to them. Hence, what we are looking for, we are looking at problems which remain hard even on quantum computers. So not now the factorization problem, not discrete log problem. We are looking for some different problems now. Problems which are hard even on quantum computers. Okay. So those are the problems we are looking for. We already know, fortunately, some problems. Now, knowing the problem is not enough. Using those problems, we need to create cryptographic algorithms and then standardize them. Okay. So that is the problem. So they started in 2016. So they had encryption algorithms first, which concluded in 2022. But they found that signatures were not there in enough numbers. Everything was only coming of one type, and they are afraid of only one type. One type means, I will talk about later. There is some problem called lattice-based cryptography. So all the algorithms that they standardized was falling in that category, lattice-based cryptography. Now they are a bit worried. What happens tomorrow if lattice-based cryptography does not remain secure? Then everything will be broken. So they have continued this competition for signatures now, and that is ongoing right now. Maybe this year they will finish that, and we will have digital signature standard also. Right now we only have encryption standard, which are primarily based on lattice, but there is also other kind of algorithms which are also available. So I will talk about it. What they are doing now is they created a public forum. They said, here is a call for proposal. Submit your algorithms. And the algorithm that you submit should not be encumbered by any patent. So tomorrow it should not happen that we standardize your algorithm and a company comes tomorrow and says, you are using my algorithm, please pay this much $1 million. Or they start asking any company in the world which is creating products for that. They say it should be patent free. Okay. Then they said it should be secure. Now how do you check security? So there is public scrutiny happening. So for 5-6 years scrutiny took place. People actually create algorithms, people try to find weaknesses in those algorithms, not only in theoretical weaknesses, but also implementation weaknesses. That certain algorithms are very hard to keep secure even in software or hardware. So those algorithms were eliminated from the competition and so on. And this process went on for many years. this was a completely transparent process. People could write papers, people could publish, they even organized workshops. And in each of these workshops, they actually discussed the papers which were published. Academicians went there, industry people went there, and finally evaluation process happened. So the evaluation process took place something like this. This is 2016, ended in 2022, and there were 3 different rounds. So initially so many entries were submitted, they were cut down, few were left in round 1. Out of round 1 they again cut down, few were left in round 2, finally few more cut down, round 3, and finally they have selected only 3-4. They are the standards. So for encryption they have already created the standard. Whether it is really correct attack or not, and actually many of the algorithms were removed because of this security issue. So it is not that everybody is, and the designers were all great people, all wonderful people in crypto community, still they could design something which could be broken by somebody else. And that actually shows that transparency is very, very important in cryptographic algorithms. Then performance, if you implement them, how much memory is required, how much time is for encryption, how much is the key size, all those things became important. And when I'm sending messages, maybe I can only send few bits of message. So how much is the overhead in communication? To send one kilobyte, maybe I need to send actually 4 kilobyte. So there is this 3 kilobyte extra overhead. So communication overhead. So all these things were discussed in this performance. In implementation, they looked at hardware implementations, software implementations, side channel attack resistant implementations, and so on. And then they looked at versatility. That is the same problem. Can it be used for encryption, signature, key exchange, everything? And that is actually came out to be top for that reason. It is so versatile, everything can be done with it, and it has certain provable guarantees that nobody can break it. We have proof that nobody will ever be able to break it. So that is why this specific problem that I am talking about became very, very important. So these are the 5 types of problems on which this so-called PQC is based. So when I say post-quantum cryptography, it means cryptography which is requiring certain hard problems, and those hard problems are not discrete log, not factorization. So what are those problems? One problems are based on lattice. Okay. So on the basis of lattice, we have a crystal Kyber encryption algorithm and crystal lithium signature algorithm, and they are based on problems like LWE, which I am going to talk about later. Then the second class of problems are based on code-based cryptography. By the way, this is the oldest known problem apart from the RSA. So this is known from beginning 80s or late 70s. In 1976, RSA was published, and by 79 or 80, this algorithm was published, McAleese encryption algorithm. Okay. And this McAleese encryption has been now modified to make it much faster, and that is known as classic McAleese. This is based on mathematical problems on coding theory. Okay. So that also I will discuss in a very brief. I will try to spend most time on actually LWE, a little bit on this, and rest of the things I will not describe, but I am just naming them here. Okay. So there is a multivariate polynomial cryptography, which is actually about solving a system of quadratic equations. Okay. So there are many quadratic equations, you have to find an answer to all of them, satisfying all of them. So that is known as multivariate quadratic equations. The variables are not now 2. There are x, y, z, multiple variables, and you are solving quadratic equation, which means terms are of either degree 2 or degree 1 or constant. So and you try to solve an equation. Then there are hash-based signatures. So hashing algorithms are again standard classical hash algorithms, cryptographic hash algorithms. But using these hash algorithms, you can create signatures. So they are also available. And finally, there is some problem based on elliptic curves. So it's not elliptic curve discrete log problem. It is isogeny problem on elliptic curves. So if there is one elliptic curve and another elliptic curve, there can be a function between one curve to another curve. So on a family of curve, you can create a problem which is called isogeny. So it is some sense of equivalence between these curves, and that problem was used to create an encryption algorithm called AICTE. And the beautiful thing here is that these algorithms were about to be standardized, and around 2021 or 22, just before standardization was about to happen, 2 PhD students somewhere in Europe, I forgot the country, they broke this AICTE. Okay. So this is the importance of cryptanalysis. They used some old mathematics theorem from 1940s or 50s, and they came up with a very nice trick to break this algorithm, and this was removed from the competition. So today we don't have any isogeny based cryptographic algorithm. The only one remaining was AICTE, and it was broken just before it was to be made standard. So it is that level of cryptanalysis. It's not very easy. People spend years trying to study these problems, attacking them, and sometimes they succeed. And that is why cryptanalysis of these designs was done for 5-6 years. Sometimes you may fail to find a weakness. Okay. So what are the challenges in the PQC algorithms? First is, in theory we know that some problem is hard, but when you instantiate a problem you have to choose specific parameters. And then this practical efficiency, you are trying to maintain certain practical efficiency. In some cases we look at a certain kind of finite fields which are useful for efficient implementations. But those finite fields may actually lead to problems in security proof. So that is a problem. In some cases like code-based crypto, a big challenge is the key size. Like in RSA, if I am using RSA 2048, my key size is 2 kilobytes. Okay, this is 2048 bits. 2048 bits is 2 kilobyte. Okay. 2 kilobit, sorry, not 2 kilobyte, 2 kilobit. Okay. So 2 kilobits is still very small. In Macaulay crypto system, your key sizes are something like 16 kilobytes, not kilobits, bytes. Okay. So this much public key is to be maintained by the two parties. So this is very, very inefficient. Then you require across different platforms and protocols, because people are going to use FTP protocol also with this kind of algorithms. People are going to use HTTPS protocol also with these algorithms. People may have, like my wristwatch here is using some protocol to send my heartbeat data to my phone. Okay, so there is some Zigbee protocol or Bluetooth protocol which is actually being done right now. That Bluetooth protocol also has encryption, because surely I don't want people sitting in this room to find out my heartbeat data or my blood oxygen report and so on. If it is pure Bluetooth without any encryption, anybody will be able to read. You just need a Wireshark to be opened on your laptop, run, and you will find out all the open networks here and read all the data going on between those. Okay. This is an assignment we give in classes sometimes. Okay. Use Wireshark to snoof on people talking to each other if they are not using encryption. Okay. So we need algorithms to actually support all use cases. Use cases, as I mentioned, this code-based crypto is actually definitely bad, because this wristwatch will have how much memory, and out of this most of the memory is required to implement the algorithms. Like there is a device which is sensor which is reading the data. Now this processing is happening, and then that process data is being sent to my phone. So that functionality implementation requires maybe 80% of the circuitry. Security only has 15-20% of the area available. You cannot make security to be 80%. If you start doing that, nobody will use security, because primary functionalities, you will not buy a phone, a device, a wristwatch which is this big. Okay, so you cannot sell it. Okay, so if you want a device of this size, you have only a small area available. Out of this, the functionality is first thing. Security usually comes later. Most users are not going to bother about it. Okay, so therefore, it becomes extremely important in all kind of scenarios. You cannot have that on this device I will use this encryption, but on that device I will use another decryption. So you want to have uniformity, and that's why lattice-based crypto actually became very, very popular in the last decade. Okay. And then what has happened is, when people have cryptanalyzed, people have been able to efficiently improve very quickly. Even if there was an attack found, people said, fine, you just increase 1 bit of size here, and now the attack doesn't work. So that is very easy to fix in some basic attacks. Okay. So there is current ongoing research on this direction, how to implement. A lot of work, because standardization has happened, but now people are looking at implementation. So with one of my PhD students, we actually implemented certain side channel attack resistant variants of Crystal Skyper, the encryption algorithm, and we have an IEEE transactions paper on that published recently. And then with another student, I was working on actually counting out how many qubits are required, how many QRAM required if I want to break a classical algorithm in a quantum world. So there are all kind of research happening in this direction. Side channel attacks are being done right now. So this is a broad idea of what is the process. Okay. Now I will come to the main part, which is very mathematical, and that is the lattice-based crypto. Okay. So in the lattice-based crypto, I will talk about the core problem, and this is the very mathematical part. I will skip some of the details when I explain this. Okay. So the key ideas is actually there is certain lattice structure. Using that lattice structure, we will have some problems. There are two problems called SVP and LWE, which are very common. I'll explain them as I come along. And the example schemes based on such ideas are NTRU, Kyber, and dilithium. NTRU was not selected as final winner, but Kyber is a standard. So Kyber is current standard for post-quantum encryption, and dilithium is the current standard for signatures. Both are based on lattice problems. Okay, so I mean you can do key exchange also using lattices. So if you look at lattices in crypto, these are mathematical structures which were actually studied hundreds of years ago. So Gauss and Lagrange used them in number theory, and using this they studied problems like quadratic reciprocity, okay, and four square theorem and so on. And then Minkowski studied a lot about these, and he called them as geometry of numbers. Then in the 80s, these three L's, Lenstra, Lenstra, Lovash, they came up with an algorithm called LLL, which does some basis reduction, which I will talk about. And this can be actually used to factorize integers. It also has implications in lattice-based problems. So this actually led to lattices being used in our collaborator of Ramanujan, Hardy, Professor Hardy, to whom our Ramanujan went in Cambridge. So he used to work on number theory, and number theory had no practical use in those days. So he has written a book called A Mathematician's Apology. It is available online. I think libraries also you will find. It's a great book, very thin book, but very famous book. A Mathematician's Apology by G.H. Hardy. In that book he writes, there are some areas of mathematics which are called applied, but he takes pride in the fact that nobody uses my ideas. So I am in the pure mathematics, I do number theory. He wrote in his book, and with proud he wrote that. Okay? Nobody uses mine, I am actually pure mathematician. I do things for which there is no application. Okay? And look at this pride that he says, I am pure, no application, and I am just doing it for intellectual curiosity. He didn't live long enough to understand that his kind of results are actually leading to RSA. So RSA is nothing but that kind of number theory. Nobody knew till 70s that this could be used for such kind of things. Okay. So same thing, lattices, nobody knew how to use them in practice, but today they are going to actually make standard for international standard for encryption. LLL was the first time when they were made to do something useful, and then in the 90s, AICTE actually came up with a beautiful thing. He came up with an idea which was worst case to average case reduction. Now what happens in cryptography, we want very hard problems. Okay. Now if you look at say a problem which is NP hard, what does it mean to be an NP hard problem or an NP complete problem? What is the meaning of in some sense? Intuition, what is the intuition? There is a class of problems, that class of problems is NP hard. That means if I pick some problem from that, some problems from that set are going to be extremely hard to solve. That is the kind of thing. But if I pick a random problem, there is no guarantee that it is hard to solve. Maybe a random problem might be easy in that class, but there exist problems which are very hard. That is the meaning of NP hard or NP complete. Okay. So when I say these hard problems, they are in the worst case hard. May not be average case hard. Like factoring problem, I gave example already. Factoring problem on an average is not hard. If I pick a random integer and give it to you, very high chances that you will be able to factorize it. Because with 50% chance the factor will be 2. With some more chance it will be 3 or 5 or 7. So 90% chance that you will be able to factorize with very small numbers. But there is a worst case example in this set which will be very hard for you to solve. Similarly, here also in lattices there are some problems which are known to be hard. But what AICTE showed is a beautiful result. He said, if you can solve, if you have a worst case hard problem, from there I can create an average case hard problem. Or in other words, if I pick any random instance of a problem, that is already very hard. Okay. So it is unlike factoring where some cases are easy. Here every case is hard. That is what AICTE showed in the 90s. It's a remarkable result. It shows that these problems are really, really hard in lattices. So I can randomly pick an instance of the problem, you will not be able to solve it. Okay, that is the great result. And then using this result, Hofstein, Pfeiffer and Silverman, they have also written a book of cryptography. You may have seen this. These are the three authors, Hofstein, Pfeiffer, Silverman. They came up with an encryption algorithm using this AICTE's idea on lattices, and they created anti-RU public key encryption. Intrue, it's called Intrue. So N2 encryption algorithm was created, and then Regev and Vicciancio, they actually came up with even more interesting theoretical results on lattices in early 2000s, and by 2007 now we have lots of encryption algorithms, signature algorithms, etc. And the push came because of the PQC. So from 2016 onwards there were actually practical algorithms also. But a lot of theoretical work happened before this PQC competition was started. So that is in last 20-30 years only. Still this is a new area in the sense that most of the research in this area has happened in last 20-30 years. Okay. Because you see, this result actually was 90s. Okay. This was 95 or something, 96, something like that. Okay. And then this is about 2003 or 4, and then these are the new results. Okay. Now I'll use the standard notations like natural numbers, integers, rational numbers, etc. I'm more interested right now in this n-dimensional Euclidean space. So these are essentially n real numbers put together, and that's the vector space. All combinations of them we are going to look at. I will use the dot product, inner product of x and y. I'll use the double vertical bar to denote the norm of the vector, which is the length of the vector, and x minus y, the Euclidean distance between x and y. I mean the norm of x minus y. So this is a lattice. So what is a lattice? Lattice is a periodic structure. So here is a picture, lattice, and you can see this kind of a structure is repeated across. So this is in 2 dimensions. Also in R square there is a lattice. This repeating pattern is called Voronoi cell. So I am repeating this Voronoi cell again and again, and I am creating a lattice. Now formal definition of a lattice is if I want to look at a lattice in R to the n, which means n real numbers put together in a set, then it's a discrete subgroup of R to the power n. So there are 2 parts, the discrete and the subgroup. Subgroup means if 2 elements are in the lattice, their difference is also in the lattice. Okay. So if x and y are in lattice, then x minus y is also in the lattice. And the discrete part says that if I look at any circle of radius r, there will be finite number of points only within the lattice. Okay. So there is some origin somewhere. So maybe this dot point is the origin. So from this point I create a radius r. So if I create a radius like this size, this is the only point which is here. Okay. I increase the size of the radius, maybe I go here, then I have few more points in the lattice which are falling here. Okay. But they are all finite. Okay. Unlike real numbers, for example. So in the set of real numbers or in the set of say even rational numbers, I can never create a radius r in which there are finite number of rational numbers or real numbers. Correct? There are infinite numbers. So those are not discrete sets. Here this is a discrete set. Okay. So here is again an example now. So this is a 2-dimensional lattice, and whenever I talk about lattice, I also talk about some basis vectors. So basis vectors are those vectors whose combination gives me the entire lattice. So here is 2 basis vectors, b1 and b2. b1 is like this x-axis unit vector, b2 is y-axis unit vector, and you can see all combinations of them can create this lattice vector points. So these points are the lattice points, and the structure is called lattice. Okay. This is in 2 dimension. We will show things only in 2 dimension because we cannot understand things very well in higher dimension. But in crypto we will use